Going with modified stems and roots, this hunk of ginger is a modified stem. If a modified stem is found under the ground, that would make this a rhizome, like the iris. And if you cut this in cross-section, you'll see it's all stem tissue because it's really dense, and you can see if you cut it in a few slivers, you'll even see that it breaks apart and you see all this fibrous tissue. All right, so now we're talking about this right here is a bulb. This is an onion. Onions and tulips and daffodils all make bulbs, as does garlic. Most people think the bulb must be a root because it's found under the ground. As you can see, this onion's a little bit old. I'm going to, first of all, use those green onions on a stir fry tonight, and they'll be delicious. Those are, in fact, green onions. If we cut this in half, you will see that this onion's a little bit old. If I plant this to the ground, this would start growing into more onions. But if you see all these little layers, and I'm going to grab my flamingo pointer, if you see all of these little layers, this is the awesome thing. They're all connected to that green. And you can pull apart the layers of an onion, as you know. And once you do, you'll realize an onion is a bulb are modified leaves. These right here are all leaves wrapped around a central core. The true roots of the onion are right here, and you can see the little root crown where the fibrous roots came off. So an onion is a bulb, and a bulb are modified leaves. All right, welcome back to Guerrilla Gardener. So today we're going to go over the structure of a tuber. This right here is a potato. As you can see by those little buds right there, these are called eyes. These are new plants forming. Once this starts happening, it's actually not a good time to eat the potato. But a tuber is a modified root, and they're really high in starch in this case, which is why we like eating them. So because it's too late to eat this potato, I'm going to turn this into more potatoes by planting it in the garden. The first thing I'm going to do is just cut it apart, and I'm going to cut through one of the eyes, even though you shouldn't, just so you can see the cross-section of the eye. That is new plant forming. The rest of my cuts, all I'm going to do is try to isolate one little eye off the potato at a time, like that. Now all of those are going to go into my garden eye side up, and they will all grow into new potatoes. Each one will form a plant, making dozens of potatoes if I give them the right conditions. Later on this week, I'm going to post a video showing you how to plant these in the garden and get the best potatoes possible. And once again, a potato is a modified tuber. Or it's a modified root called a tuber. All right, so right now we are going to be working on propagating potatoes. Here is an old raised bed. One of the first things you want to do when you're preparing a vegetable garden to grow your own food is you want to turn over the soil. What I'm doing here is just called digging and turning over. Since we're growing potatoes, it's got to be said, I'm a botanist, and Fort Collins will fear my botany powers. So all I'm doing as I'm digging this is first I'm going to turn over this entire bed. It's probably better to wear closed-toed shoes, but I forgot to grab a pair. And you just work your way across. Rather than stabbing the shovel into the ground, you use your foot to push the shovel down, keeping the other foot back so you don't remove any toes, or your sandals won't fit. The process of growing food is great because it gives you lots of advantages. It's going to give you healthier food. A weird thing about a potato is they're sweeter when you first harvest them. By the time they're in the grocery store, the sugars in them have been converted to starches just through normal biological processes. That's also good exercise. And also, it's a good way to be socially distant and isolated right now. Allows you to deal with food scarcity. I know a lot of people that grow more food than they can eat, and they give it away to those that need more food. The potato you saw me cut up is going to give way to probably about 2 bushels of potatoes if it's grown correctly. So the first thing I'm doing is just going straight across to double dig the potato bed. It's good to make sure that you have good soil. If there's grass there, you want to remove the grass before you get started. You can either slice the grass off, or you can use some sort of other remedy like mulch a few days in advance. Right now, it's snowing on Easter, and it's actually a great day to grow potatoes, or start growing them. Potato history is awesome. Potatoes originate in Peru or South America. They were brought to Europe through the Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange is often referred to by people of European descent as all the things that we brought to indigenous Americans living in the Americas. We did bring some STDs as well as the flu and a few other infectious diseases like smallpox. We did give them some technologies, but we also developed a lot of crops from the Columbian Exchange. Those include things such as potatoes, tomatoes, which just, tomatoes were originally grown in Europe and they thought they were poisonous. They thought they only grew them to be ornamental. It also gave us things such as tobacco and coffee and chocolate, as well as squash. A lot of the stuff we now eat, including corn as produce, is from the Columbian Exchange. So the potatoes history doesn't end there. You can't talk about potatoes with talking about the 2/3 of my ancestry that is Irish. The Irish used to be 120 years ago were referred to in the United States as the potato eaters. It was a derogative term. The U.S. has a strong history of part of being part of the melting pot is you're not welcome until the next demographic arrives, and then everybody joins in and has racism against the next demographic. So the potato famine is kind of a weird bit of U.S. history, or Irish history. The Irish weren't intentionally growing potatoes because they wanted to. The Irish were occupied by other parts of the United Kingdom, and it was a feudal society where each family had a tiny postage stamp parcel of land to grow their food. They quickly realized one of the easiest ways to feed a large family was with a small plot of potatoes. Before we continue with that, what I'm doing now is digging 2 trenches that are going to be 1 foot apart. And I'm mounding up the soil so it's going to make 3 mounds on either side of 2 trenches. This is a really easy trick I learned from my buddy Will Hintz to grow potatoes. After you make the trench and you get the potatoes in the bottom of the trench, as they grow, you're going to cave in the soil and alternate that with layers of straw. Not layers of hay, because hay has seeds. You want to do layers of straw. If you don't have that, leaf mulch works well too. It's going to give, then ultimately over the next 2 months, we're going to collapse these trenches onto the potatoes and bury the potatoes deeper, making more roots, making more potatoes. So back to the Irish potato famine. So Ireland was growing all these potatoes, not because, particularly those of Catholic descent in Ireland, were not allowed access to the other food sources, primarily the fish. So the only thing they could grow were potatoes, and they were growing all the exact same variety of potatoes. What triggered the potato famine was a volcanic eruption in what is now Siberia. The volcano was in a remote area that no one recognized or even realized because there's no one there. It wasn't until years later they realized there was an eruption. That eruption put so much ash into the atmosphere that it blocked out the sun, cooled off the earth just a little bit, but enough to shut down the Gulf Stream, which brings Caribbean water from the southeastern part of the North Atlantic Basin off the Bahamas. That water usually heats Ireland and Europe. During the potato famine, that current slowed down and no longer brought warm, moist air to the coast of the United Kingdom. It was referred to as the summer that didn't come. The fields remained cold and wet all summer, and it caused a water mold that attacks potatoes to proliferate. That wiped out most of the potatoes overnight in all of these fields. In Irish history, it's a weird moment because 1/3 of Ireland moved to the United States. About another third remained behind, and the last third didn't survive. And it was all caused by everybody growing nothing but the same crop, which is why I'm going to show you why you should grow multiple different, or how to grow multiple different crops in your yard. But as you can see, I'm almost finishing the trench. But the potato famine is a weird moment of history in Ireland. Uh, and that is one reason why, as you look into it, you'll see there really is no ethnic food associated with Ireland. Because they were kind of a famine nation as a result of potato famine and weird social things going on. Most Ireland's not really famous for its cuisine. Most of its foods are borrowed from other countries. So I hope you enjoyed your little lesson on potatoes and the history of the potatoes. Now that the garden is all double dug, it is ready to get it started. The last thing I'm doing is stretching a nice little line with the shovel in both trenches so I know exactly where I'm going to place the potatoes. And as you saw, you don't have to go to the store and buy special potatoes for growing. You just grab the old, sketchy potatoes that have gone a little bit bad in your kitchen, and they'll be perfect. If you get interested in potatoes, there are some really amazing ones. One of my favorite ones that is hard to find in stores is dark purple. It's a dark purple fingerling potato. I just went to go get the potatoes in there. There's that little chunk of potato that you saw me grow up, or cut up. And now it's in the ground, and you just push them into the ground, equally spaced apart. There'll be a longer video of me planting the full potatoes. Thank you.